Hi, good evening. Welcome to Author's Talk by Trishna, Ghost of the Silent Hills, Story 8, A Little Girl's Mission. Let's begin. The west coast of Australia was reeling under a heat wave. Throughout the last week of December, the temperatures in Canberra had remained above 40. It was the hottest Christmas that people could remember. Global warming, people said, wiping their sweaty brows as they greeted each other. In Lucy's house, a different kind of heat wave was in progress. To escape it, she was here at her friend Susie's house, playing with her dollhouse in their cool basement. Lucy, be careful. Don't put my new doll on the floor. It's my best, you know. Mama took one whole week to make it. Susie was a few months older than Lucy, therefore patronizing towards her and Peter, her younger brother. Sorry, Susie. Lucy quickly picked up the doll. You know, I don't let Peter touch at all. He'll spoil it in a day. She had the indulgent tone of a big sister. But you can play with it. You are my special friend. Lucy Smith nodded and smiled gratefully as she kept the doll in her lap and pretended to put her to sleep. Just then Mrs. Sarah Wilson walked into the room. Lunch is ready, Susie darling, and where is Peter? Haven't seen him for quite a while. Lucy instantly responded, Mrs. Wilson's. He's playing in his room under the bed. He said he was Spider-Man fighting the evil inside a cave. She giggled, and this highlighted the cute dimples on her cheeks. Spider-Man in a cave. He doesn't know that Spider-Man climbs up the walls. Sarah smiled genially. Oh, he's not yet 4. He'll learn these things gradually. Sarah Wilson was a housewife. She had left her job after Peter was born. She wasn't one of the career-oriented, ambitious women. A happy family was all she ever desired. And she was ready to confer as some pampering on Lucy too. She badly needed it. God alone knew what the poor little girl was undergoing. The afternoon got darker as the thunderstorm rolled in. The windows rattled. Peter came running and clutched on his mother's legs. Look at Spider-Man. Susie laughed at her brother. He scared off thunder. Lucy tittered. How will you rescue people from evil forces, Peter? Peter made a face at them. He didn't like being teased by the girls. They pretended to be oversmart. It's going to rain, Peter. We'll get relief from the heat. Isn't that nice? His mother smiled and ruffled his hair. Come, children, I have some cool gazpacho soup and the leftover meat pie from the Christmas lunch. Yay, I love meat pie, Peter hollered. Would you like to lunch with us, Lucy dear? Asked Sarah. Lucy shyly nodded. There was no lunch at home anyway. Her mom and her dad had left in the morning without saying a word to each other or to her. She had made a Vegemite sandwich and had swallowed it down with a glass of cold milk. Then, changing her clothes, she had come straight here to be with Susie and her family. It felt so relaxing and safe here in Susie's house. Why wasn't it like this in her house too? Love and happiness. There was nothing but anger, hate, arguments, quarrels, terrible fights. Last night her mom and her dad had argued again and again. Her dad had slapped her mom so hard she had heard it even through the closed door of her room. She had heard more screaming and things hitting against the wooden floor. That were they hitting each other with? Furniture. She had wondered and shivered. They might hurt each other badly. She had blocked her ears to shut them horrible voices out. What else could she do? She wanted them to be together always. She loved them both. This time there were no Christmas presents too. There was no Christmas in their house. The shopping had remained in the box, packed and lying in a corner, lost and sad like her. Her dad had brought a tree, but the day they had planned to decorate the tree, he had kept on talking to someone on the phone. Her mom had got exasperated and had snatched the phone out of his hand and thrown it down. It had broken. Then there had been a fierce fight between the two. They used such horrible words for each other, pushed each other, and then her dad pulled her mom's hair and threw her down on the floor next to the phone. I'm sorry. I married you, okay? I'm sorry. I am now trying to set it right by eliminating you from my life. That's all. I want to get rid of the filth and clean my life. He had screamed. Her mom had kept sitting on the floor, whimpering and sobbing. Lucy had seen it all. This time nobody had bothered to tell her to go to her room. She had sat frozen on the sofa, shocked and shivering. She had felt so terribly scared and lonesome, like the Christmas tree that stood in the corner shriveled the morrows. She understood everything. Her dad was having an affair with some other woman and wanted to leave her mom, but her mom insisted that she still loved him, didn't want to separate from him. Why has dad become like this? A monster. He used to be so loving till some time back, bought me toys, took me for ice cream treats, and often to play or skate in the park. Now it is as if the devil has got inside him. I'm scared. There was no one side she could speak with except Lucy. Lucy had tried discussing her sordid matters with her, but she did not mean encouraging. It happens, you know. Very common. Haven't you seen in so many movies where the man doesn't love his wife but someone else? She had said like someone intellectual but trotted off. Lucy wished the Christmas summer holidays to be over and school to begin. Going to school was a big breather. So was being at Susie's house. Susie's mom was such a kind and gentle lady. She was never harsh with her children, never screamed and shouted, unlike her own folks. Her father too was so gentle. Why wasn't I am born here as Susie's sister? Our names rhymes too. Lucy and Susie. Lucy and Susie. Lucy whispered as she got up to follow Susie and her mom to the dining room. With glooming thoughts invading her young, impressionating mind, both the families lived in a quiet lane on Deccan Street of Canberra, southwest of the Capitol Hill, with the peaks of the Brindabella and Tidbinbilla ranges offering panoramic view for its residents. Smiths lived down in the lane 6 houses away from Wilson. The couple had shifted here with their daughter only a year ago. Sarah Wilson had met Lucy's mother, Dora Smith, only twice, once during the Halloween, when the children had gone demanding treat or trick to the houses along with the mothers, and next to just outside on the road she had found her a pretty and gentle lady. With her husband was dating someone else she couldn't figure out. The summer holidays got over and school opened once again. Life became tolerable for Lucy, though she seldom saw her father now. Many a time he didn't even return home at night. Her mother became increasingly silent. She hardly spoke to her and cried a lot. Lucy was terribly sorry for her and worried too. A frightening, creepy silence had replaced the violent fights, like a hush preceding a deadly storm. Autumn arrived in March. Laughter had smell of barbecues exuded from the neighbor's garden. But Lucy's house remained enveloped in a sad, airy silence. The Easter holidays came and went as languidly for Lucy as her life had become. The only memorable part of the Easter holidays was a day-long picnic with Susie and her family in National Botanical Gardens. She hadn't been on an outing like that for a long time. The trees growing on gradient slopes looked so beautiful with their leaves having acquired hues of new shades, greens, yellows, oranges, reds, as if they had dressed up to bid farewell to the world. While Susie's parents sat drinking wine, Peter ran around the sculpted dinosaurs. Both the little girls went for a walk. The barks of the gum trees had acquired amazing patterns and colors Turkish eon honeydew. There was a breathtaking display of wild flowers in the spectacular blush. The girls ran around them and around the fern trees, the grass trees, the banksias, the golden wattles, the mistillate flocks of shrieking cockatoos hovered above. Brilliant colors of rosella gleamed through the foliage. It was such a fun. Then even spotted a mother kangaroo with a joy in her pouch and hopped after her. Back home, Lucy quietly slipped into her room. As usual, nobody greeted her. Nobody inquired about her day. No one in the house cared for each other anymore, and it broke her heart. Her dad was unusually home and sat watching TV. He didn't turn to say hello. Lucy's mom was in the bedroom, probably sulking. The bedroom was exclusively her mom's now. Her dad had been sleeping in the TV room for quite some time. Their once warm, loving family was now lost to the cold world of conflict. Lucy hated the woman her dad was seeing. She held her responsible for their misery. By April end, the temperature began to fall. Winter arrived all at once. By now, Lucy's parents had drifted apart, and both of them knew that the love and warmth in their relationship will never return. The cold was having its toll on Lucy's too. She had developed this rankling cough, which was being conveniently neglected by her parents. Lucy began to spend every evening with Susie and her family, sharing their evening supper. But her cough was getting worse. That began to alarm Sarah. She hoped it wasn't infectious. After watching her suffer for a few days, Sarah decided to talk to Dora Smith about it. She was even a bit annoyed. How could the parents so utterly neglect their child? She called up Dora and requested her to take Lucy to the doctor. I think, Mrs. Smith, the cough is not a simple one and it's getting worse. I know it. Thank you for the concern. But I have already taken an appointment with a doctor for tomorrow. Dora sounded rude. Sarah knew she was lying. Thereafter, Lucy stopped coming to their house. After about a week, Susie brought up the topic. Mom, what's wrong with Lucy? She doesn't come to play with me anymore. She is not even coming to school these days. Sarah immediately called up and inquired and was told by Dora Smith that Lucy was running a fever, but should be fine in a couple of days as she was under medication. But to Susie's dismay, Lucy never came to play with her again. Neither did she go to school. Repeated phone calls to her went unanswered. Winters passed, spring arrived in September. A month long annual Floride flower festival began. Wilsons decided to take the children to see the vibrant hues of the exotic flowers at the festival. Mom, I wish we could take Lucy along. I still wonder why she refuses to be in touch with us, Susie remarked despondently. Sarah nodded and immediately picked up the phone to place a call. The bell continued to ring. There was no response as usual. A little worried about her daughter's friend, she promised Susie that they would visit her house. When the next day both of them walked to Lucy's house, they saw a big lock on the door. Hello, Sarah. Seen you after a long time. Sarah and Susie turned to find Smith's immediate neighbor, Mrs. Jane Watson, standing at the gate of her house. Oh, hello, Jane. We have come to see Lucy. She's Susie's friends, you know. Susie instantly voiced, I haven't seen her for a long time, Mrs. Watson. She hasn't been coming to school either. Do you know where she is? Don't you know? Her parents separated a few months ago. Lucy and her mother moved out of the house. I don't know where they went. Oh, disappointment was apparent in Susie's tone. She didn't even come to say goodbye. Jane smiled weakly. When they left, Lucy seemed very sick. She could barely walk. When I expressed my concern, her mother said she will be taken care of. So does not that mean nobody lives in their house now? Sarah eyed the big padlock once again. A new woman has shifted in with the man. I have had a glimpse of her a few times with Mrs. Smith. She stays aloof, doesn't mix with the neighbors at all. Susie and her mom returned home. Susie remained silent for a long time, and Sarah cried and tried cheering her up. It's okay, Susie, darling. That's what life is about. You meet new people, you lose old friends. Susie hid her face in her arms to hide her tears. Don't worry, my darling, you'll make many new friends. You already have many friends in school. You can invite them home. Don't feel sad for Lucy now. Just pray she's happy wherever she is. That's the problem, Mom. I am worried for Lucy. She used to share things with me, and there were so many problems in her life. She wasn't happy. On top of this, she felt so sick. I understand your concern. She is a very sweet girl. I am sure her mother is taking good care of her. Actually, Mom, I keep dreaming of her a lot. Yesterday night, too, she came in my dream. She said she wished to come back to play with me, live with me, but she is very far now, finding it's difficult to return. But she said she is trying her best. Hmm, trying her best? Mom, is she planning to run away and come to us? I hope not. And these are just dreams, Susie, darling. Don't bother about them. But they feel so real. Like Susie is just standing next to my bed and talking. I feel it. Forget about it, Susie. She is out of our lives now. God alone knows where she and how she is. Months passed. Susie became immersed in her life. The memory of Lucy didn't fade. She kept appearing to her dreams. Then one day at the dinner table, Peter all of a sudden stated, Lucy has come back. Susie's eyes widened with interest. How do you know? I saw her standing in a garden under the plum tree. When? Susie was curious and excited. In the evening, when I was playing with my Superman army in the porch, Peter spoke through his mouth full. Why didn't she came inside? Did she say anything to you? Did you say hello to her? Susie asked, disappointed. I did, but she never replied. Funny. She just stood there, like your limp doll, and then after a while she was gone. Since when has she came shy of coming to her house? She could come to say hello to me at least. Perhaps she has come to see her father and didn't have time to come here, Sarah inferred. She's my friend. It's not fair. She's here and I didn't even know. Susie had tears in her eyes. You can go and meet her tomorrow. It's Saturday, Sarah proposed, planting a kiss on Susie's cheeks. We'll go right after breakfast. Happy? I don't want to see her father. I don't like him. Susie pouted. It's okay. He won't harm you. I am coming along. The next day, soon after breakfast, Susie and her mom marched down the lane to Smith's house. The door was opened after repeated, insistent knocks. Lucy's father stood at the door, cold and frosty. He had salt and pepper stubble growing on his face, as if he had shaved for quite some time. They could see a skinny lady sitting on a dining chair with her back towards them. She didn't even turn to greet them. Hello, Miss Mr. Smith. I am Mrs. Wilson, your neighbor, and this is my daughter Susie. I know. What do you want? Sarah was taken aback by the man's rudeness. Susie didn't like this tone towards her mother and boldly stepped in front of her, as if to protect her. Mr. Smith, I am Lucy's friend. Have come to meet her. I believe she is visiting you. Visiting me? Who told you that? The man had turned visibly pale. My little brother met her yesterday evening. Susie stood smugly with her hands locked behind her. Mr. Smith stared at her horrified. His jaw dropped in disbelief. But the lady sitting on the chair came alive. She abruptly turned to face them. A thin, oblong face appeared haggard, worn out, and unpleasantly drained of color. Her eyes seemed wild, delighted and fright, and she definitely seemed unwell. There was clear panic on her face. I told you, Dan, I told you so. She is here, but you just wouldn't believe me. Mr. Smith paid her no heed. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, but there's surely been some mistake. My Lucy died 6 months ago of severe pneumonia. He buried her in Gangolin Cemetery. Now, if you'll excuse us, the door was shut in their faces. Sarah and Susie stood gaping the door. They could hear the lady's high-pitched screaming. Sarah held Susie's hand and gently pulled her away. Susie was crying softly. Mama, Mr. Smith is lying. No, my darling, don't say that. Why would a father lie about his daughter's death? But Peter saw her yesterday. If Lucy died 6 months ago, then who did Peter see? Susie spoke through her sobs. He must have seen someone else. Sarah's heart was racing and her legs were unsteady. But she must pacify her daughter. You know Peter well. His attention span is so short. He must have glanced at some girl standing there and taken her for Lucy. Sarah tried explaining, though she was extremely perturbed and shaken. Lucy was very distinct with her auburn curly locks that fell over her forehead and her shoulders, and a cute freckled face. Susie, please don't mention Lucy being dead to Peter. He's too young to absorb such information. Susie nodded. He won't even understand what being dead means. Then, after a short silence, she spoke, more to herself. Lucy's been coming in my dreams, almost like she was there standing next to my bed. Shh, don't think about it, dear. Dreams are not real. A fortnight later, Mrs. Jane Watson visited Sarah unexpectedly. Her brows were creased in worry and she appeared highly distressed. Do you have some time, Sarah? I have come to discuss something serious with you. I didn't know who else to approach. Sure, Jan, come in. Let me get you a cup of tea first. As the woman sat in the parlor with their cups of hot coffee, Mrs. Watson immediately came to the point. Sarah, there's something strange going on Smith's house. Strange? In what way? You know, often at night the lady Mrs. Smith's lived-in partner shrieks terribly like a pain or in fright. That's pretty strange, Sarah nodded. She was trying to hide her increasing anxiety and fear. It was 3 nights ago, I think. I was tossing and turning, unable to sleep, when I heard this woman shriek. Then the door opened with a bang, and I heard voices outside. I got up to check what was going on. The woman was standing outside in her filmy nightdress, shivering, and the man was coaxing her go back in. No, she's there. I can't stand it any longer. She's airy, she cried. She was shivering like a leaf. The man shook his head and said something, but I couldn't catch that. He then wrapped his arms around her and guided her in. Quite strange. Sarah could barely manage to keep her hands from shaking. You know, Sarah, till then I had thought Mr. Smith was a sadist and he tortured her. I was even planning to go to the police, but that night it appeared a different matter altogether. The woman is downright selfish. Can't tolerate child visiting them. She wants her to be sent away. Imagine creating so much ruckus over that sweet little girl coming to her own house. She took a sip of coffee with great relish, gratified with the conclusion she had drawn. Her eyes shone like a detective's after solving the tough murder mystery. Sarah shrugged her shoulders uneasily. She wondered which little girl Jean was talking about. She hoped it wasn't what she was thinking, Jane. I have no idea what's going on in that household. Though when Susie and I went to see Mr. Smith, he seemed a bit disturbed, unhappy. But then it is to be expected. Expected? Why? You know, his daughter Lucy is dead. She died a few months ago of pneumonia, so naturally the father. What? What did you say? Lucy's dead? Yes, that's what Mr. Smith told us. Not possible. Jane's eyes now bulged out of their sockets. I saw Lucy yesterday standing outside the door of their house. The poor lady had lost all color on her face. Then she went inside, and the woman began to shriek. Jane covered her face. There was total disbelief in her eyes. Oh my God! I even heard girlish giggles and wondered what was going on. And now you are saying she's been dead for a while? Are you sure you saw Lucy and not somebody else? It was Lucy, 100%. Do you think I wouldn't recognize the girl who has been my neighbor for more than a year? Jane was more shocked than upset. Oh my God, oh my God. The cup of coffee rattled on the saucer and her hands trembled. She kept it down and took out the handkerchief from her bag to wipe her face. She was sweating despite the cold. It's so strange. Never in life have I experienced something like this. Oh my God. Do you mean I saw a ghost? I am scared to go back even my house now. Knowing there's a ghost next door, and now I know why Lucy looked somewhat different, ghostly pale. Oh my God. Don't, Jane, you don't need to be afraid. We were good to Lucy when she was alive. She has no grudge against us. Sarah's statements was self-consolatory. Do you mean Lucy has come back from the dead? I think so. It appears it has not been able to forgive the woman who had made her and her mother's lives miserable. She has not been able to rest in peace. What should we do now, Sarah? My mind is not working. Lucy's ghost is next door. Jane took a few quick breaths and shivered. I think we should discuss the matter with the priest this Sunday after the service, Sarah suggested. She didn't reveal about Peter having seen Lucy's ghost too. That would be too fearful for the poor lady to absorb. But it worried her now to know that Lucy's ghost had been there in her garden. And what about Susie's dreams? Are they really dreams? Sarah's hands gone cold. So had her whole body. It was imperative that they consult the priest for the wandering soul's salvation, and very soon. Yes, yes, that we should do. Jane stood up and walked to the door. I must go home now. I have an appointment with my dentist. She hesitated at the door. Sarah, I'm really, really frightened to walk alone all by myself. Come, Jane, I'll walk with you halfway. After the Sunday service at the church, Sarah and Jane waited for everyone to depart. Then they approached the priest. He patiently listened to them. Sorry, ladies, I can't barge into somebody's house without being invited. that too to exorcise a wandering spirit of a child. Moreover, we are not even sure if the ghost exists. One time sighting can also be a mistake. Let's wait. What about the shrieks and the disturbance caused for the neighbor's father? Jane protested. Listen, ladies, I can only act if the people directly involved approach me. How can I march into a house and tell the man, I have come to expel the ghost of your daughter from your house? Huh? Will he accept that? He sighed, looking at the fallen faces of the ladies. All right, if there is even one more sighting by any one of you, I will get in touch with the experts. Frankly, I have no expertise in exorcism. Jane and Sarah returned home, disappointed. The angry spirit of a child was hovering over the neighborhood. It was scaring the hell out of them, and there was nothing they could do about it. Soon the entire neighborhood realized that something was very awry in Smith's household. The lady, a shrunken skeleton by now, would often be seen on the street in her shabby nightdress, her hair matted and her blank eyes staring into the void. Many a time Mr. Smith was noted persuading her to return home, to which the lady would resist. The terrible shrieks at night continued. Jane visited Sarah often to report the happenings. It was pouring heavily on a day. Jane rushed to Sarah's house in urgency. She was drenched to the skin despite carrying an umbrella. One look at her face and Sarah knew something was seriously wrong. After offering her towel, Sarah seated her in a parlor and rushed to put her kettle on to make her a hot beverage. Jane followed her into the kitchen. I saw her again today, Sarah. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. She is trying to kill the poor lady. How? Sarah's eyes expanded in fear. It was at the window watching the downpour when the woman rushed out in her skinny nightie in this cold. Oh God, you should have seen the fright on her face. The next moment, Lucy was there too, behind her. Then the woman's hair stood straight behind her as if somebody was pulling at them. The woman shrieked in intense pain. I became immobile. I'm telling you, Sarah, she's killing her, slowly, wickedly. What can we do, Jane? Let's not get involved. Sarah bit her lip and fished on her chair. But I am already involved, Jane cried. Lucy saw me. My window was barely 20 feet away, and she slowly turned to stare at me. There was anger in her big hollow eyes. It was creepy, chilling to the bone. Jane covered her cheeks with her palms and shook her head. I trembled. I wanted to withdraw, but fear had me glued to the floor. And and then she opened her mouth, menacingly, bigger and bigger, as if she could swallow me alive. There was nothing but hollow blackness inside her mouth. Jane trembled. Oh my God! She scared the hell out of me. She knew I was watching her, and so she told me to mind my own business or I am frightened. Sarah, so frightened. What shall I do? What if she grows a grudge against me too? Jane moaned. Sarah handed her a cup of tea and realized Jane's hands were shivering. Her own heart was racing. Poor Jane and poor Smith's woman. She thought as they both shifted to the parlor. Jane continued. Then, as soon as the woman dashed back inside, followed by the ghost, I picked up my umbrella and rushed to you. It was too much for me to take. I didn't want to be alone in the house. She slumped on the sofa. See, my legs are still trembling. I feel weak. Sarah held her hand reassuringly. Drink your coffee. You'll feel better. After a little thought, she added, let's see the priest again and request him to do something about it. Jane nodded fervently. Tomorrow, perhaps. The next day, when Sarah rang up Jane and to ask her to go to meet the priest, she reported that probably they wouldn't need to. The woman is gone. Mr. Smith accompanied her in an ambulance. I had stepped outside to throw my trash in the bin when it happened. Oh, so she is going to be admitted in the hospital, in a mental asylum. I saw the ambulance. It's belonged to the Callan Park Hospital for the Insane. Oh, both the women felt sad but relieved. This was conceivably the end of the nightmare. Lucy's ghost had accomplished its mission and now would go where it belonged. Peace returned in the quiet neighborhood. The whispers behind closed doors sustained for a while. A month later, Jane came to Sarah to deliver another news. Lucy's mother, Dora, has shifted back to her house. The couple seems to have reconciled. Isn't that wonderful? That's great news, Jane. Thank God, Mr. Smith has finally realized her importance in her life. Sarah beamed. Maybe he loves her deeply, but was lured away by the other woman's willy charm. Jane voiced disdainfully. If you love someone deeply, you remain steadfast. Sarah put down her cup of coffee, twirling her wedding ring. Nevertheless, I am happy for Dora. Poor woman. She unnecessarily suffered so much. If the couple had separated and this Smith fellow had been more sensible, perhaps their child would have been alive. I hope Lucy's soul is at peace now. Jane rested her hands on her lap and lowered her head to pray. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. Sarah instantly joined in. May the souls of all faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen. The prayer gave them relief like a heavy burden lifted, a difficult task accomplished. They hoped that their prayer had reached the soul of the child to its eternal peace to heaven. That evening, after dinner, Peter and Susie were as usual in the parlor. Susie read her storybook while Peter played with the Superman toys. It was a relaxed evening. Sarah had given James the full report of the Smith household affairs. James was all smiles. All's well that ends well, he remarked. They sat in the sitting room sipping Chartreuse liquor. John McLaughlish's jazz instrumental music softly drifted through the record player and floated in the room. After a while, James stood up. Sarah, darling, I'm really tired. It was very hectic at day today. Going to bed, are you coming? In some time, dear. I am enjoying the music. McLaughlin is amazing. Love listening to him. She closed her eyes and rested her head on the sofa back. She was still immersed in the world of music when she opened her eyes to glance at the clock. It was 8:30, much past children's sleeping time. Susie, Peter, she called out, it's pretty late. Time to sleep, dears. Susie, pack your bag before going to bed and hurry. A few minutes passed. Sarah then heard Susie taking off her little brother. Pete's, off you go. Haven't you heard Mom saying it's bedtime? Okay, big bully, going. Sarah heard Peter patter of Peter's little feet heading towards his room. She smiled. Her children were such darlings. Never gave her any trouble. She slumped her head back on sofa and once again closed her eyes. She felt so peaceful. Life had been so kind to her. It was so fortunate to have a loving husband, a loving children. Everybody was not so fortunate. So could now hear Peter's pitter patter heading towards the sitting room. She opened her eyes yet again. Peter was standing at the door. What now? Sarah wanted to ask, but before that, Peter grumbled through his spouted mouth. Mom, send Lucy to her house. How can I sleep with her sitting on my bed? Sarah shot upright on the sofa, her eyes popping out of the sockets. She stared at Peter in disbelief. "Mom," Peter called, baffled by his mother's reaction. Sarah sat frozen, immobilized by terror, for the apparition was now posted right behind Peter, distinctly Lucy, but a mere ghostly shadow of her original self. Scary, sunken, dark holes were ostensible where once sparkled lovely blue eyes. A contented smile playing on her pale, translucent face chilled Sarah to her bones. That night the residents shivered inside their houses as the woman's chilling scream resounded through the air, shattering the silence of the street. The ghost reacted by opening her mouth wider and wider, revealing a dark, infinite hollowness. Streaks of sweat began to pour down Sarah's face. Peter, already unnerved by the scream, watched horrified as his mother slumped down on the sofa. So this is all for today. Hope you like the story A Little Girl's Mission. I'll be back with new horror chills and thrills. Till then, good night. Take care of yourself. See you.